Hello, I'm going to teach you how to play the Acts of the Evangelists. This is a game for 2 to 5 players that I've designed. And we're going to teach you the game by starting with the game's scoring rules, and then we'll teach you what you actually do in the game. A lot of the game scoring comes from these tracks, which are called literary devices. So in this game, you're writing the text that we call the 4 Christian Gospels, and your texts are made up of these pages that we call codex leaves, and you're going to write stories onto those pages, and we call those tradition cards. This is what those look like. And in the actual Gospels, they put the stories together in ways that had some purpose to them. One of the purposes was theme. Each Gospel has a theme, a message that the author is trying to communicate. In this case, I'm blue, so I'm the Jewish Messiah is what I'm trying to communicate. But then in addition to that, there's some significance to the arrangement of the cards, and that's what we're going to talk about with the literary devices. So there are 4 different devices. The first is called inclusio. This is a cluster of cards that all share the same eyewitness. So if we look at these circles up on the left-hand side of the card, these basically signify who was present to witness this event. And if we have a group of these together, and we have an interview card for that witness, like that, that's called an inclusio. That means that, oh, green was the person who told me about those stories, and I'm putting all those stories together to show this is like an extended quotation from James. All right, the second literary device is called emphasis. These cards also have, you can see on the right-hand side, there are motif symbols. There are 5 different symbols. There's a crown, a coin, an explosion, footprints, and there's one more that's not shown here that's a heart, or that's a hand of blessing. These are motifs, recurring things that come up throughout the Gospels. And so emphasis is that if I have one symbol that's present on at least 4 of the cards in my Gospel, then I get to move up on the emphasis track. That's not the case currently, but I have a couple that I have 3 here, so maybe I'm going to try and get a 4th to get an emphasis in explosion symbol. The third literary device is called chiasm. A chiasm is an ABBA construct, and it's helpful for memorizing in an illiterate society. And so in this game, the ABBA comes from the arrangement of cards with shared motifs. So it's a cluster of 4 cards for which the first and fourth have the same motif. In this case, 24 and 32 both have a coin. And the second and third have a different motif, and that is, these explosion symbols. So here we have ABBA. The last thing is chronology. This is cards that are in order. So I have here, all my cards are in increasing order, so I do have a chronology from that. But as we may know from the Gospels, not everything is in chronological order, because to the writers, chronological order wasn't the most important thing of all. What was most important was the thematic message the authors were trying to convey. And so here I've kept these cards in chronological order, but I don't have to, and I could add other cards that may go out of order, or I may end up rearranging things to break the order. So chronology is how many cards ended up in order. So that is what you're trying to do in this game. You're trying to get cards that match your theme. You're trying to put together clusters of cards that have a shared witness, so they can be an inclusio. You're trying to get the same motif recurring throughout your Gospel, so you can get an emphasis. You're trying to put together nice little structures that are called chiasms, and if possible, you're trying to keep things in order. That's a big chunk of what you're trying to do in the game. So let's zoom out and talk about how you actually do that. In this game, you're going to get 6 turns. The game lasts 6 rounds, and each round, we each get 1 turn. And on your turn, you get 3 of these action octagons. Whoops, I dropped one. And these are used to initiate actions. Each action has a weak form that can cost 1 action octagon, or a strong form that costs 2 action octagons. And each action has a follow form, which means another player can give you a follow token to use that action. if you took a weak action, or if you take the strong action, everybody gets to follow that action for free. Okay, so there are 4 actions. The first is called travel. We use this to move, and travel lets you move 2 spaces, and spaces are these circles, either the big ones or the little ones are called waypoints. So I can move 2 spaces on the weak form, or I can pay 2 octagons to go anywhere. In addition to this, there is the boat action, which is a free action. It doesn't cost an octagon, and you can do it any time. But if you're in a city with a boat, you can move 2 spaces, taking the boat with you, and you can only do that once per turn, and same thing, travel. You can only do that once per turn. Okay, the second action is called tradition. This is the most important action because this is how you get these cards that you're going to score points for. Okay, so I'm in Tarsus. I'm going to pick up the cards in Tarsus and look at them. And then I can keep 0 or 1 for 1 octagon, or I can keep 2 of them by paying 2 octagons. So maybe I'll keep this one, and whichever cards I don't keep, I put back in the city and I put one of them face up. Then the follow version of this action is that somebody else can go to the secondary deck here. This is a deck of the same cards, but they're kept in order. And whoops, I took card 3, so someone else could take card 3 out of the secondary deck and put it into their gospel. The third action is called interview. For this, I look and see, well, I take an interview card for that witness, and then I look and see whether they're alive or not by drawing a cube out of the bag. If it's white, they're still alive. If it's black, they have died, and then I have to take another black cube from the supply and add it to the bag if that happens. But in this case, John is still alive. So now I look at the cards, the tradition cards in my gospel for which John was a witness. So here, 30 and 32. So I count those up, and then I give myself tally marks on the score pad. If he's alive, I get 3 tally marks for each card I have, so that would be 6. Or if he were dead, I would get 2 tally marks for each. For a 1 octagon weak action, if I were to pay a second octagon, I would get 5 or 3, so per card. The follow version of this has 2 parts. First, if someone else has the John interview card, they get 2 points for that. And then in addition, each card that they have in their gospel that John witnessed, they get 1 point for that. All right, the last action is called rearrange. This lets me move things around in my gospel. I can either move a codex leaf to a different location in my gospel, like that, or I can flip the page of a gospel by switching 2 stories on the same page. But I can never move a card from one page or codex leaf to another. I can only change an individual page. Rearrange is, I can do that once for 1 octagon, or as many times as I want for 2 octagons. And follow is to do that action 1 time. Well, I already talked about the literary devices and how you are going to move on those, so you know how to do that. So after everybody's taken a turn, at the end of your turn, or at the end of the round, we advance this track, and we take all of the white cubes off of the board, put them back into the bag, but then pull 1 out. That signifies that somebody has died, but we don't know who yet. And if we end up on a space with a card icon on it, that means that everybody gets an additional page. That happens twice during the game, and you can add it to either end of your gospel, either the front or the back end. Okay, when we reach the end of the 6th round, we have final scoring, and you get scoring from a few different sources. First, you get points for your tally marks that you've gotten. You write down the number of tally marks that you had. Each is worth 1 point. Second, we get points from the literary device tracks. For each track, whoever is furthest along on the track gets 15 points, regardless of where they are. So here, yellow, pink, yellow would all get 15 points. And then each position behind that track, or that cube, is worth a little bit less. It's worth 11, 8, 6, 4, 2. So in this track, yellow gets 15, brown gets 11, blue gets 8. In this case, yellow gets 15, skip 1, and then blue only gets 8. and so on for all the tracks. Then we have scoring for theme cards. In this case, I'm blue, so you count up the theme cards you have. I have 2. Whoever has the most gets 15 points, and then it's the same way. For each one that you're behind that, you would get 11, 8, 6, 4, 2 points. In addition to that, though, if at least half of your cards match your theme, then you get a 5-point bonus for that. And the last thing is there's a thing called a tie penalty, which is that for each cube you share a space with on a literary device track, you lose 1 point. So in this case, I'm blue. I would get -2 points because I share 2 spaces, or I share spaces with 2 other cubes. And so that's supposed to encourage you to push for a higher position on each track. Okay, and with that, you now know how to play the game. I hope you will enjoy it. Thanks.